Oh, goody.
Alright, what's going on everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So in this one we are taking a look at the top 10 unreleased cards. If you don't know, there are a ton of unreleased cards in Marvel Snap, and the developers eventually have plans to amp up the amount of new cards we get from just one a month in the season pass to being about a card a week. So that's pretty exciting. They already have a ton of cards that are either in development or pretty much finished, and some of them have been data mined in the game. So we're going to take a look at those and see which of these cards are my top 10 favorite out of all the ones we have seen so far. Quick disclaimer that obviously this is all data mined information, so anything you're seeing here is definitely subject to change, as sometimes these cards do go through multiple changes before they're actually released to the players in the game. So let's take a look at the top 10 unreleased cards in Marvel Snap. First up, we have Nebula. Nebula is a 1 cost, 1 power, 1 drop, and her description reads, on reveal, if your opponent played a card here this turn, ×2 power and put this in your hand. So this is really cool, kind of on theme with the rest of the Guardians of the Galaxy characters, but doing stuff a little bit differently rather than just getting a power boost when you play her in the same spot as an opponent played a card that turn, but you actually get her back to your hand so you can do it again, which is pretty sweet. Definitely like it, and there's some interesting kind of mind games here, because eventually you are going to want to play her in a lane the opponent did not play something, otherwise she's going to keep bouncing to your hand and you're not going to actually be able to take advantage of this big power you ramped up. So really cool design, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing where this one finds a home when she comes out. Next up is Silver Surfer. Silver Surfer we looked at in my recent video about future season passes. This one seems like he's going to be joining us next month in December. He reads 3 power or 3 cost 0 power. On reveal, give your other 3 cost cards plus 3 power. A pretty interesting effect, and definitely something I could see seeing play in either a deck that is a little bit more mid-rangey with a lot of different 3-drops, or possibly a Cerebro or Mr. Negative deck to take advantage of trying to have all this stuff at the same power, or in Mr. Negative's case, the fact that he is 0 power himself, so if you swap him around, he's a 3 power for 0 cost with that bonus effect. So that's a pretty cool one. Definitely looking forward to this card. We have War Machine. War Machine is a 4 cost, 5 power. Ongoing, your 1 cost cards have +1 power. So fun fact for anyone who wasn't in the beta, this is actually what beta Khazar was, essentially. They actually nerfed Khazar because he was very, very strong. Still is very strong, but they nerfed his power by 1. So it looks like War Machine, at least in its current form, is pre-nerf Khazar. And I think this card could be very, very powerful in the Zoo deck. Obviously, right now, you know, when you get into Pool 3, you aren't seeing quite as much of Zoo, but I think that's because people don't really know how to adapt the playstyle, and I could definitely see this replacing something like Blue Marvel, because it does what you want, where it's buffing your team, but this could allow you to go more all-in on 1-drops, because instead of playing a 3 power and buffing everything by 1 on turn 5, you could play a 5 power and also weave in another 1-drop. So I could definitely see this working in a more 1-drop centric version of the Zoo build. Then we have Valkyrie. Valkyrie was actually supposed to be released a while ago during Nexus events. If you don't know what those were, I'll have a video talking about what Nexus events were and why it's a good thing that they did away with them before the release of the game. But Valkyrie is a 5 cost, 3 power. On reveal, set all cards at this location to 3 power. So this is a pretty interesting one. I really like effects like this where you can kind of build your deck around it, so you're taking the most advantage of it. You could have a lot of small things and then up them to 3 power while decreasing your opponent's stuff to 3 power, and then you could use other effects to buff them up even further. So I think this is a really neat effect, and this is definitely one of the cards I'm really looking forward to whenever she drops into the game. Then we have Miss Marvel, 3 cost, 4 power. Ongoing, if this is your only card here, adjacent locations have +5 power. So this feels pretty thematic, as Miss Marvel's abilities are kind of similar to Mr. Fantastic in a lot of ways, so it's kind of cool that she has a similar but different effect where she's buffing the other adjacent locations, but in her case it's only if she is alone in the lane, but +5 power, that's nothing to scoff at. So definitely going to be in a deck where you're really prioritizing the left and the right lane, and just kind of throwing her down there in the middle as a boost to those lanes without actually taking up a spot in either of them. Then we have Uncle Ben. So this one's hilarious. I think this is really funny, and I think it's kind of indicative of some of the just silly stuff we're going to see from this game in the future. Getting in, lesser known or lesser important Marvel characters and having a fun spin on them. And I don't think there's a better example of something like that than Uncle Ben here. He is a 1 cost, 2 power description. When this card is destroyed, add Spider-Man to your hand. So I could see this actually being pretty good in destroy focused decks, because obviously he's just an easy 1-drop that you want to get destroyed. So he helps fuel your Carnage, your Killmonger, your death decks, all that kind of stuff, which is good. And then Spider-Man is a very powerful kind of utility card where I could see those decks occasionally making use of it, but probably not enough to justify it as an inclusion on its own. But if we're getting it as a payoff of doing something we are already wanting to do, which is just destroying our own cards for benefit, I could see this having, a lot of potential in certain decks. So it's just a really funny card, and I can't wait to see when we're going to get a hold of this one. Then we have Dallzer. Dallzer is a 4 cost, 4 power, ongoing. If you have 4 cards at each location, +8 power. So potentially 12 power for as little as 4 cost. That's a lot of power. And I can definitely see this being very useful in decks that are trying to go wide. The Patriot deck is definitely one that comes to mind, or, maybe this gives more of a reason to run cards like Ultron and Squirrel Girl and focus on kind of going wide, buffing your board, and then having her as kind of a sneaky finisher. Once that board is fully filled up, you get a huge amount of power for the cost. 2 of the last ones we're going to look at are actually very related to each other here, and definitely kind of a lore win. But the first one is Jean Grey. Jean is a 3 cost, 3 power, and on reveal, the next card your opponent plays must be played here if possible. So this is pretty neat. I think anytime you're forcing your opponent to do something, it's pretty good. We've already seen some effects that are a little bit similar to this in the cards that kind of move your opponent's stuff that they played to a location. I know Arrow comes to mind, and that card has been seeing a lot of success recently. So the fact that you can kind of force them to play something in, a lane they might not want to play it is pretty powerful. The only downside here is it's the next card. So if they have a bunch of small stuff to play, they could just burn a 1-drop into that location and then play their stuff elsewhere. But if you're playing versus a deck that's all about the big things, I think this card could be a very, very powerful tech inclusion. And then, fittingly enough, going along with her here, we have Phoenix Force. This is a 6 cost, 3 power, on reveal, revive one of your destroyed cards with +5 power. If it's Jean Grey, +10 power. So there we have kind of the fitting lore thing where, Jean is the Phoenix. So if she's the one you're resurrecting, +10 power instead of just +5. I think this is really neat. This is another card that I think is a cool payoff for destroy type decks. 6 cost is a lot though. So I do think if you're going to be using a card like this, you probably are going to need to be guaranteeing that whatever you're blowing up has to have been something maybe you cheated out, or just has a very, very high power for the cost, where getting an additional +5 power, or in Jean's case, +10 power, is enough to really push it over the edge. And last, but definitely not least, is Mephisto. This might be my absolute favorite card of all the unreleased cards, so that's why I saved it for last year. Mephisto is a 6 cost, 0 power. And his description reads, "If you win this game, double your winnings." This is so cool. This is, I think, the first card we've seen that actually has a direct impact on the snap. And I do wonder how this works where, you know, if you do double your winnings, is that just me getting double the amount of cubes? Does the opponent lose double the amount of cubes? I don't really know, but this is just such a cool effect. And obviously, you know, in a lot of decks, this card probably isn't going to be very good because you're taking up your whole final turn to essentially add nothing of value to the board to try and increase your gamble and your chance of getting a fat payout if you do win the game, especially if snaps were involved. But because of that 0 power, anytime you see something with 0 power and a decently high cost with a solid effect, which I would say this is a solid effect, even though it's not impacting the board directly, Mr. Negative loves these cards. Mr. Negative and alongside him, Jane, to draw your 0 cost cards post negative effect. It's pretty nuts. So I think that there's a very real chance this card ends up seeing decent play in a Mr. Negative deck, and I am certainly looking forward to trying that out because I think it'll just be a lot of fun. And as someone who really likes the snap mechanic and thinks it is a big part of what makes the game really fun, I'm very excited about a chance to double my winnings, especially if the opponent doesn't see it coming, and especially if it also takes more cubes away from them. That would be pretty funny. But yeah, those are our top 10 unreleased cards for Marvel Snap. Definitely curious what you think of these cards. Let me know in the comments what your favorite one is, as well as what you're looking forward to in terms of build-wise. You have any cool ideas to use these cards? I will also have a link in the description in the comments below where you can check out pretty much all the current unreleased cards if you want to see ones that didn't make it into this video. But yeah, that is going to wrap it up for this one. If you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.